You think you're in control of your emotions. You think you choose how you feel. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Most people are puppets. And the strings? They're made of feelings. Someone says the wrong thing and you spiral. Someone leaves and you break. Someone ignores you and suddenly your entire day is ruined. You didn't choose that. You just reacted, like a machine, like a trained animal. And the worst part? You've been doing it so long, you think it's normal. You think that's what it means to be human, to feel everything, to react to everything, to let every word, every look, every silence dig into your chest and twist. But what if I told you that the strongest people you've ever met aren't the ones who feel nothing? They're the ones who feel everything and still don't move. They've learned something you haven't. They've learned that emotions aren't the enemy. Reactions are. Let me take you back to a moment you probably remember. Someone you trusted, really trusted, turned their back on you. Maybe they lied, maybe they left, maybe they just changed, and you were still holding on to who they used to be. And it destroyed you, didn't it? Not because they left, but because you didn't see it coming. You gave them access to your mind, your peace, your sense of self-worth, and when they walked away, they took all of it with them. You felt empty, powerless, like a part of you died. And in that moment, you made a promise to yourself. You said, I'll never let anyone do this to me again. But you didn't know how to keep that promise, so you did what most people do. You tried to feel less. You tried to care less. You tried to become cold. And it didn't work, because you can't kill emotions. You can only learn to stop letting them control you. Here's what they don't tell you about emotions. They're not bad. They're actually incredibly useful. Fear keeps you alive. Anger shows you boundaries. Sadness teaches you what matters. But somewhere along the way, you stopped using emotions as information. You started letting them make decisions for you. Someone disrespects you, and instead of thinking, you explode. Someone you love starts pulling away, and instead of observing, you cling. Someone criticizes you, and instead of filtering it, you absorb it like poison. You're not responding to life. You're reacting. And reactions are predictable. Reactions are weakness, because the moment someone knows what makes you react, they own you. They can push your buttons whenever they want. They can make you angry, sad, desperate, confused, just by knowing which words to use, which silence to create, which memory to bring up. And you'll dance, every single time, until you learn to stop. The first step to becoming untouchable isn't about shutting down. It's about waking up. It's about seeing the game clearly. People will test you, not because they're evil, but because they're human. They want to see if you're stable, if you're solid, if you can be shaken. And most people fail that test immediately. They cry too fast, they explain too much, they defend themselves against accusations that don't even deserve a response. And that's how others learn they can manipulate you. Not with force, but with emotion. A little guilt here, a little fear there, some jealousy, some shame. And suddenly you're doing things you don't want to do just to prove something to someone who doesn't even matter. You've handed them the remote control to your mind, and they're switching channels whenever they're bored. Now let me tell you about silence. Real silence. Not the kind where you're quiet but seething inside. Not the kind where you're biting your tongue so hard it bleeds. I'm talking about the silence that comes from truly inner calm. The kind where someone tries to provoke you and you just don't care enough to respond. Because you've already decided that their opinion of you isn't your responsibility. Their anger isn't your emergency. Their manipulation isn't your problem. You see it, you understand it, and you let it pass. Like wind, like noise, like something that was never yours to carry. That kind of silence terrifies people because they're used to reactions. They're used to power. They throw a punch and you're supposed to flinch. But when you don't, when you just stand there, unmoved, unfazed, they realize they have no leverage. And that's when they lose. But here's where most people mess up. They think becoming untouchable means becoming empty. They think it means not caring about anything or anyone. And that's a trap. Because when you kill your ability to feel, you don't become strong. You become numb. And numbness isn't peace. It's just delayed pain. What you're really trying to do isn't eliminate emotions. It's eliminate dependency on external validation. You want to reach a place where your mood doesn't hinge on someone else's behavior, where your worth doesn't collapse because someone didn't text back, where your peace doesn't shatter because someone chose someone else. And that's possible, but only if you're willing to face something uncomfortable. The truth that most of your suffering comes from attachment. Not love, attachment. Let me explain the difference. Love is when you care about someone, appreciate them, enjoy their presence, but you don't need them to complete you. Attachment is when you've made someone responsible for your happiness, when their absence feels like amputation, when their approval becomes your oxygen. And attachment always ends in pain. Always. Because people change. People leave. People disappoint. Not because they're cruel, but because they're human. They have their own fears, their own wounds, their own survival instincts. And sometimes those instincts will lead them away from you. And if you've attached your entire sense of stability to them, you'll crumble. But if you've built your foundation on yourself, on your own mind, your own values, your own inner strength, then their departure won't destroy you. It'll just be a change. Painful maybe, but not fatal. This is where logic becomes your greatest ally. Not cold, robotic logic, but calm, clear thinking. The ability to step outside your emotions and ask, is this reaction helping me? Is this thought true? Is this person worth my energy? Most of the time, the answer is no. Most of the time, you're suffering over things that don't matter, over people who forgot about you 5 minutes after the argument, over situations that won't even exist next year. But your mind is still there, replaying it, analyzing it, torturing itself. And for what? For nothing. You're bleeding over a cut that's already healed. You're fighting wars that are already over. And the only casualty is your peace. So you start to train yourself. Every time you feel that familiar surge, anger, hurt, jealousy, fear, you pause, just for a second. You don't suppress it. You acknowledge it. Okay, I'm feeling this. Why? And then you dig. Is it because someone actually hurt you? Or because your ego got bruised? Is it because you lost something valuable? Or because you lost control? Is it because they're wrong? Or because you need to be right? Most of the time, it's ego. Most of the time, it's fear. And once you see that, the emotion loses its grip because you're no longer identified with it. You're observing it, like a scientist watching a reaction in a lab. Interesting, but not personal. And then comes the hardest part, letting go. Not just of people, but of the past, of the need for closure, of the fantasy that one day they'll realize what they lost, of the hope that they'll come back, apologize, explain. They won't. And even if they do, it won't heal you. Because healing doesn't come from external apologies. It comes from internal acceptance. The acceptance that what happened, happened. That people did what they did, that you felt what you felt. And that none of it defines you now. You're not the person who got betrayed. You're the person who survived it. You're not the person who got abandoned. You're the person who learned to stand alone. And that shift from victim to student is where the transformation happens. You stop seeing people as good or bad. You start seeing them as teachers. Some taught you what love looks like. Others taught you what it doesn't. Some taught you loyalty. Others taught you boundaries. Some taught you joy. Others taught you resilience. And all of it, every single experience, made you sharper, wiser, harder to break. Because now you know. You know that people are temporary, that promises are fragile, that feelings fade, that attachment is dangerous. And instead of being bitter about it, you're just realistic. You love people without needing them. You trust people without losing yourself. You invest emotionally, but selectively. And when someone shows you they're not worth it, you don't fight to change their mind. You just quietly withdraw your energy. No drama, no explanations, just distance. Because you've realized something powerful. Your attention is currency. Your emotional energy is limited. And you're done spending it on people who don't value it. You're done trying to prove yourself to people who've already decided not to see you. You're done chasing closure from people who've already moved on. You're done performing for an audience that doesn't even care. You're turning inward, and that's where the real power is. Not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your peace. You become the kind of person who doesn't need revenge because indifference is more powerful, who doesn't need the last word because silence speaks louder, who doesn't need validation because you've validated yourself. And people notice. They notice that you're different now, calmer, quieter, unbothered. And it confuses them because you used to react, you used to care, you used to break. And now you're steel. Not because you're heartless, but because you've learned that the heart is strongest when it's protected, when it's guarded by a mind that knows its worth, a mind that refuses to be manipulated, a mind that chooses logic over chaos, peace over drama, self-respect over temporary comfort. And that mind, your mind, becomes a fortress, not to keep love out, but to keep destruction out. This is what it means to be emotionally untouchable. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply, but you don't let those feelings dictate your actions. It doesn't mean you don't love. It means you love wisely, without losing yourself. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care selectively about people who've earned it. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're controlled, disciplined, sovereign. You've taken back the power you gave away, the power to define your worth, the power to choose your peace, the power to decide who gets access to your inner world. And that power, nobody can take it from you, unless you hand it over. And you won't, not anymore. Because you've seen what happens when you do. You've lived through the chaos, the sleepless nights, the obsessive thoughts, the desperate attempts to fix people who didn't want to be fixed, the endless cycle of hoping, trusting, and getting hurt. And you're done. Not in a bitter way, in a wise way. You've graduated from that lesson. You've closed that chapter. And now you're writing a new one. One where you're the priority, where your peace is sacred, where your energy is protected, where your mind is your sanctuary, and nothing, no person, no memory, no fear gets to disturb it. You walk differently now, talk differently, think differently. You don't explain yourself to people who aren't listening. You don't defend yourself to people who've already judged you. You don't chase people who've already walked away. You just exist, fully, calmly, powerfully. And the people who are meant to stay, stay. The ones who aren't, don't. And either way, you're okay. Because your stability doesn't depend on them. It depends on you. And you finally learned how to be your own foundation, your own safe place, your own peace. This is the rebirth. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, just real. You're not the same person who started this journey. You're stronger, wiser, freer. You've become the kind of person who can love without fear because you know you'll survive if it ends. The kind of person who can be vulnerable without being weak because vulnerability is a choice, not a condition. The kind of person who can be alone without being lonely because you've learned to enjoy your own company. The kind of person who doesn't need to win every argument because you know that peace is more valuable than being right. The kind of person who doesn't need to be understood by everyone because you understand yourself, and that's enough. So, when people try to shake you now, they can't. When they try to manipulate you, you see it. When they try to hurt you, you feel it, but you don't break. You bend, you adapt, you learn, and you keep moving, because you've realized that the only person who can truly destroy you is you, and you've decided that's never going to happen again. You've decided that your mind is your kingdom, your emotions are your subjects, and you, the calm, clear, unshakable you, are the ruler. Not a tyrant, not a victim, just sovereign, just free, just untouchable.